3 things you need for your VA disability claim to go through. Not a week goes by where a potential client doesn't come to me and say, hey, I've been told I need a Nexus letter for my claim. How do I get one? Or what do I need for my Nexus letter? Can you send me a template or something? And my answer is usually the same. I don't know if you need a Nexus letter. That kind of catches them off guard because they've read on the internet that that's what they need. Or sometimes a veteran service officer will tell them that's what they need. Or one of the claims consultants will try to sell them a Nexus letter. I'm here to tell you that you might not need one, and you shouldn't rush into getting a Nexus letter because, quite frankly, sometimes it might not be the thing that is holding your claim back. Let me tell you why. So there's another gentleman on YouTube. His name's Clay, and he's over the CivDiv. And he put this the best way possible. It's all about the evidence. And that evidence is your evidence, the veteran's evidence. And quite frankly, this is prophetic and should be the #1 thing out there. And that evidence isn't a Nexus letter. Let me back up a little bit and tell you a little bit about the claims process and what the 3 things you need for your VA disability claim to go through. The first thing you need is evidence of some sort of in-service condition, event, injury, or exposure. Something happened to you is the bottom line. Or you were exposed to Agent Orange, or you were exposed to some sort of carcinogen, or you were injured, or you were treated for a condition. That's pillar #1. Something in service. Pillar #2, there has to be something wrong with you now. What is wrong with you right now? Is it that your knee hurts? Is it arthritis? Is it cancer? Is it a breathing problem such as COPD or asthma? That something has to be a diagnosable condition or a pain in a joint per Saunders, which is a case that came out a couple years ago. Something has to be wrong. Now, a mistake we see a lot of people claim is that they might claim PACT Act. Well, PACT Act isn't a condition, and burn pits isn't a condition, and Agent Orange isn't a condition. You have to claim what is actually wrong with you. And that might be as simple as cancer or as simple as knee pain, but you have to point the VA at the issue that is bothering you right now or giving you problems. It is the disability you're seeking benefits for. The third thing is the Nexus. Now, this gets people tripped up all the time because the Nexus is what the C&P exam is for, right? So you don't have to bring your own Nexus to the VA. Now, you should help the VA by bringing them a theory of service connection, whether that's primary, secondary, or worsening, what have you, or presumptive as the case may be. But you don't have to bring them a Nexus letter because the VA has hired C&P examiners. Now, I will tell you flat out, a lot of the C&P examiners are not great at what they do. It's not necessarily their fault. As I've said in other videos, the exam requests are bad. They hire nurse practitioners to render complex opinions on complex matters, and they don't give them a lot of time to do that either. So there's a lot of problems with the system, but ultimately you can generally ask the VA to provide a Nexus opinion for you. So why do people say that you need a Nexus letter, and why are there so many companies out there that are selling Nexus letters? If you read the rules, if you provide your own Nexus letter, and if there's evidence in the file that supports the Nexus letter, such as evidence of the in-service condition and evidence of a current condition, the Nexus letter can help tie everything together. Now, the big problem is, and I warn all my clients about this, the VA often ignores private Nexus letters. They are not supposed to do that. Let me say this again. The VA is not supposed to ignore private Nexus letters, but they do it all the time. I discussed this in another video, one of my earliest videos, Developing to Deny. It's a little older now. I didn't have a producer back then, so the production quality is not great, but they ignore them all the time, or they'll offer, or the VA will order another medical exam just to discuss the medical exam that you've already provided. Now, when do I use Nexus letters? Sometimes I advise my clients to get a Nexus letter if the condition is something that is going to be a little bit complicated to explain. And in my experience, I don't think that the VA has the capabilities to do that. I do that for things such as TDIU, or maybe a non-presumptive cancer condition that might be a little bit harder to prove, or certain cases where sleep apnea might be harder to prove, especially where weight gain is an intermediate step. So sometimes I recommend that a Nexus letter is used, but you have to have a bigger plan. You have to have a plan to provide the evidence that supports the Nexus letter. A Nexus letter with no medical records to draw on is worthless. A Nexus letter that doesn't draw on any lay statements is worthless. You need the evidence. You need to build the foundation before you build the house on top of it. The house being, of course, the Nexus letter. A Nexus letter can be useful in certain situations, but only if you've properly developed the case underneath it, and only when you're prepared to take the appeal further because the VA doesn't always listen to them. Don't rush into a Nexus letter. It depends on the circumstances of your case. It depends on the evidence in the file. And it depends on whether you've already asked the VA to try to assess the situation on your own. So again, don't rush into Nexus letters. For most conditions, it's not necessary. For most conditions, just bringing your own evidence to the table is more than enough. Tell the VA if you've been treated at a VA treatment center. Tell the VA where you've been treated in the DoD system. They will gather that evidence. But if you have your private treatment records, it's a good idea to bring those and upload those yourself. That said, if you've provided a Nexus letter and you've been denied and want help formulating an appeal, give us a call. Let us see what we can do to help. Till next time, take care.